Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CarlGreer.com. Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting. Her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to be back. And today I have with me in the studio Mariel Forde Clarke, a healer, a counselor, and author of the new book, Where Do Our Loved Ones Go After They Die? And we are going to explore exactly that, the experience of our soul's journey, after-death communication, and so much more. Welcome, Mariel, to Voice Rising.
Well, greetings, Kara, and thank you for having me on the show, and blessings from Ireland.
Yes, blessings back to Ireland, a very magical place on this earth. Mariel, you wrote a new book, and you asked the question that has traversed the universe for centuries, and it's considered one of life's greatest mysteries. Where do our loved ones go after they die? This is a very big question. And in your new book, you've dared not only to ask it, but you've also researched it, you've explored it. Tell us what you discovered.
Well, firstly, I suppose, Kara, I have a very... my background in Ireland would have been a very kind of a sacred and mystical one because my grandmother was extremely psychic, and I had an uncle who was the seventh son of a seventh son who was extremely psychic as well and gifted, and my young brother that made his transition in 2002 was extremely gifted and very psychic as well. So it was of no wonder that I had my encounters with angelic beings and spirit guides at a very, very young age. But not everyone saw them or heard them or got kind of messages from them. So I was a little bit of an outcast, and I was deemed as away with the fairies, as they say in Ireland.
Yeah.
So and I had a huge spiritual experience then in when I was just 15. An incredible experience with Mother Mary, who has been one of my ascended masters during my healing work. But I still went on to study science, and I became a serologist. So my science mind was very, very much to the forefront. And it was only in 1992, when I had my death experience, that I wondered why on earth did I survive and others didn't? Because at that time, Kara, I had severe, well-advanced cervical cancer, and my diagnosis and prognosis was not good, and I died on the table. So, and at that stage as well, I was living in a very, very unhappy, dysfunctional marriage. And in Ireland back then, you know, there was no divorce, and there was certainly... you didn't talk about your marriage not working out because you would bring shame to family and shame within the community. And the old cliche as well, Kara, you made your bed, you better lie in it, you know? So I made my bed and I lay in it, but when I was told I had advanced cancer, cervical cancer, it didn't bother me. I just said, right, one way of ending it all, and I won't have to suffer in silence anymore. So then I wondered when I was told that by my surgeon some days later that I had actually died, and that I was hemorrhaging outwards, and it had taken a lot of medical intervention to get me back. But I remember being told, I remember leaving my body, which is another thing I can talk about later if you wish, about the actual near-death experience. But I just wondered afterwards, why on earth did I survive? I was quite happy up in that place of total peace and love and serenity with the most beautiful music. Why on earth did I have to be resuscitated and brought back to earth again? I didn't understand. So my search and my journey began years and years and years of research into other cultures, other religions, other kind of paradigms that explored the afterlife, going back to Tibetan and what they believed in, and the Eastern philosophy, life, death, and rebirth, whereas in our Western world we were just believing in life and death, So it catapulted me on an amazing journey, which I am still at the forefront of. And my book, Whereafter, that you mentioned, I had another huge accident in 2018, a ski accident.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
So you see, the angels are my guides. I don't listen, Kara. They do something kind of to say, cop on here. We're trying to get a message to you, Mariel, So
they're kind of cheeky.
Yeah.
They're a little bit cheeky.
They like humor. They like humor. They want us to have fun in our lives as well, even though life has become very compromised and serious in the past 2 years. But so in 2018, I was unable to walk for about 5 months, and I was being channeled that night, this book, Whereafter. And it was so important that I brought in the scientific, because of my science background, the medical proof, and my own spiritual work with clients, what I have witnessed with clients before death, prior to the actual death moment, and after death communications. And I was given all these segments for the book. And at one night, I just said to my guys, hello guys, I said, there is no chapters. And they said, no, just trust and surrender. So what I saw, Kara, was like a jigsaw being placed before me with all these topics to be addressed and written up. And I was guided every step of the way. So it is that's how the journey began, I suppose. And it is, at the moment, it is bringing great comfort, great hope, even to those that are hugely skeptical about anything after this life, Kara. One of my dearest friends, who is an atheist, and he has since read Whereafter, and he just scratched his head and he said, Jesus, he says, I'll have to look into this further. Now you have me all confused, he says. We scratch the head a lot in Ireland when we're a bit confused, Kara,
I think that is, where, there are many books that may be channeled, or there are books that talk about, life after death. But for many people, it's difficult to believe it or to sense it. So it is quite the journey to see the research that you've also done. So it's a beautiful blend between the research from the different cultures. I mean, and this understanding of life after life. I mean, I'm thinking of a beautiful poem by Tagore. I'm just thinking of this life after life. That's the beginning of it. But this beautiful, these ideas have been threads through many cultures for thousands of years, and yet we, in the Western civilization at least, I think it's become more and more, I would say, sanitized, or we don't want to go where it's uncomfortable. Actually, in Ireland, you guys had an amazing tradition with the keening, with the singing at the funerals, right? Which is, it's at least I'm sitting here in Germany, and I said this on another show when 2 years ago my grandmother died. And I flew to the United States to be at her funeral. And everything was very, was pretty serious. And I missed a little bit the joy and the beauty, because she had a lot of joy and smiles for this world. But what I thought was very, very bizarre was that we went out afterwards with the casket and were standing around, and they wouldn't lower the casket into the ground. They would not lower it. And we're standing there, and I'm waiting, and they said, now you can go have coffee, you can go eat. But I was waiting for this ritual, right?
Yes.
Which we know, at least in Germany, I know we lower the casket, and then often comes the ashes and the rose petals and everything.
Yes.
And they said they no longer do this. They don't lower the casket with anybody there. This is done by the grave diggers, because nobody is allowed to see this anymore. And I thought, how tragic, because we need to make friends with this very important event that will happen in all of our lives, not only with our grandmothers, but you talk about many different layers, right? So you talk about your own near-death experience. You also talk about, certain rituals that we can do maybe to prepare for our own death. You also talk about grief. You talk about, and I think I wanted to ask you this because, I think many of us can kind of understand that at some point when we get to be 95, we might have to start preparing, right? But I think it's for many people very difficult when somebody is taken so young, or when someone commits suicide, or when a child is diagnosed with cancer at 2. And how can we even process, you were saying your friend is an atheist. A lot of people, they lose trust in God when their 2-year-old son, daughter, nephew, niece is diagnosed with a terminal illness, which they just cannot believe that God can be so unfair or so cruel. And what has your research and your own life experience working with the dying helped you to understand?
That's an incredible question, Kara, and it's one that I have put to my guides many, many times. Why do the young die so young? And why is there so much tragedy with illness with young people? And my guidance has always been very, very clear. And one of the main things that they will say to me is, this is not of God's doing when a child is diagnosed with cancer, or somebody very young dies through an illness, or is born into the world with a disability of some sort. This is the sole agreement of that individual that is coming onto the earth again. While God overlights the entire planet, and every sentient being upon it, when somebody enters this earth plane, they've already preordained their destiny. They've already preordained what they need to learn when they're coming in. What soul lessons do they need to master when they come on earth? What was the lessons that they failed to master in the previous lifetime? And I found all this very, very hard, because there's an old saying, Kara, in the Sanskrit in India, and the word is called viloma, and viloma it's a kind of a phrase there that it is an unnatural process that a parent should bury a child before them. So this viloma is part of their kind of lack of understanding also, because we all struggle when somebody so young is ill or when somebody is dying. And even the work I do as a spiritual midwife it's very hard for me when I now have seen, thankfully, not many. I haven't assisted many young people in their death process, but I have attended many, many, many throughout my 30 plus years. But watching somebody so young and about to make their transition, it's very hard for a parent to let go of a child because it defies the law of nature, really. And this is what they were saying in Sanskrit, Luna.
Yeah.
It's not, no parent ever wants to outlive their child. But it's not, and then, I have seen where God is bandaged and accused and, hated. And, that we have to take our anger out on somebody. If it's not the doctors, it's God, or it's the ambulance that didn't arrive in time, or it's a series of different equations that made the situation possibly worse in the person's mind. But in saying all of that, Kara, the soul of this child has made that agreement, and that's their soul. Yeah. It's like even for the soul of a baby within a mother's womb. When a young baby is in vitro in mother's womb, and maybe it has only had a period of 3 months, 4 months within mother's womb, and then bless all those who've experienced miscarriages, like I did myself as well, the baby only needed to touch the earth plane through the mother's womb for that short period of time in order to complete its sacred contract. So it is important that we don't blame God. It's a contract that has been written up in sacred terms by the soul before it enters the earth plane.
Yeah, and I think, for myself too, I've also experienced that. I think what also is so important, and that's what your book brings, is for us to embrace, I want to say relax into, but this is maybe, too complex, but to understand, if we embrace and if we share with each other more these feelings of what it might be like to have a miscarriage, to lose a partner, to go through, or people to talk about near-death experiences, it would become, so much energy would be set free on the earth, because we wouldn't be in hiding, we wouldn't be in shame, we wouldn't be in guilt, we would be in understanding that this process of give and take, of moving forward and backwards, of expanding and contracting, that this is life. Right. I think this is such a blessing to have a book like yours, and I try to do it through music, and other people do it in other ways, is to allow ourselves to start sharing where we have had great loss and how many gifts we've found through it also. Mariel, we need to take a very, very short break, and we're going to be back in a few more moments and keep on exploring this amazing topic with you.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I am your host, Kara Johnstad, and with me in studio is Mariel Forde Clarke. She is the author of Whereafter, Where Do Our Loved Ones Go After They Die? And we are exploring exactly that very big question. So, Mariel, Silver Birch, you have a beautiful quote, and he said, and I'm assuming he said this through a channel, as far as I understand his teaching, but he said, do not mourn because the caterpillar has become a beauteous butterfly. Do not weep because the cage has been opened and the bird has been set free. Rejoice and know that the enfranchised soul has found liberty, and then if you would but unfold the powers that the Great Spirit has given you, you could understand the plan of death and realize that death is but a stepping stone, a door through which you enter into the larger freedom of the realms of spirit. What drew you to these words? What drew you to add them to the book?
As I suppose, Kara, as I was saying earlier, every passage and every segment of the book was totally guided, and I would stumble. I loved Silver Birch's significance and spiritual meaning always, and I would have studied a lot of the wonderful mystics as well, like Tagore that you even mentioned there earlier. And if we just, like you did there, just sat with these words and the meaning and the significance behind every single word, it would totally demystify our fear. And for me, what I'm discovering as I'm working as a spirit midwife more and more and more, it's the fear of dying. And in Ireland, it's never discussed until it's nearly too late. You know, people even in Ireland, the last thing they will do is draw up a will of where the money is going, or where the land is going, or where the property or the house is going, or what child gets what. And it's the last thing, because nobody is going to die. It's not going to come to my door. It will come to the neighbours, or it will come down the street, but it won't come to my door. So there is a huge, huge fear of dying. And if we could only kind of turn that unknown mystery to the known, and to embrace the immortality of our soul. People are not aware that the soul is who we are. It's not the body. And that we are actually spiritual beings coming on earth, and we occupy a human vessel, and which is the body. And it journeys with us for maybe a season, maybe a reason, or maybe just a whole lifetime. But we are spiritual beings having this human experience. And we have made this journey many, many, many times. Many lives we have had. And I suppose when I say that as well, I had the pleasure, Kara, of studying under Dr. Brian Way when I was on my quest. And Deepak Chopra, I studied with those wonderful, wonderful people. And, you know, Dr. Brian Way was a psychiatrist, and he believed in absolutely nothing but what could be measured and quantified by science and facts and statistics and figures, until he was presented with a 27-year-old girl who was suffering dreadfully from phobias and couldn't take medication, and he was her last resort. And he regressed her. Her name was Catherine, and her whole past lives started to unfold during their 4 year of working together. And he still didn't believe in what she was saying. And every time he'd have a session with her, we had no Mr. Google at that time, Kara. So he just had to make reference, go back to books, go back to history books. And he would see if she said something in the 13th century and name the terrain and what it was like and what had happened. There it was all in black and white before him. And he was still disbelieving until one day she told him something extremely personal and significant to him and his wife. Nobody had known the circumstances or knowing this. It was like a best kept secret. And she told him it. And then he became, he went from skeptic to true believer. You know, so we have so much there. There's so much in the book as well about the doctors, the many, many doctors, Kara, that, you know, did not, they had a kind of a medical mind and they did not believe in the soul, or they didn't believe, they just believed in the heart and the brain. And if they stopped working, you were hasta la vista, you were gone. And I mean, there's huge work done by Dr. Pim van Lomen, who was a Dutch cardiologist. And he has 10 years behind him where he has done this huge medical research into patients that actually flatlined and died and were pronounced dead on his operating table. And these, the accounts from these people afterwards when they were brought back, where they had been like floating out of their bodies, going to this beautiful place, hearing a voice, seeing a significant other like a loved one that was already gone before them, or music, or being stopped and being told it's not your time, and coming back into the body. And I mean, there are thousands and thousands of cases where these patients had similar experiences. So it pushed Dr. Pim van Lomen on a journey as well to prove what were these people saying? Is there an afterlife? Does it exist? So he's only one of them. And then there is Dr. Raymond Moody. Before him, there was Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Then there was the wonderful American doctor who was the neurosurgeon, Dr. Ivan Alexander, who didn't believe in anything other than science and medicine. So until he had his death experience. And so compelling was his that he had to, he felt compelled to write proof of heaven. So when you hear it coming from those great scientists and doctors, you know, even Einstein believed in a greater intelligence. He believed in the afterlife, which is hard to believe, and he believed in the power of love, because I studied him many, many years ago. So when you have all these wonderful, credible people adding their names to afterlife belief, not just a theory anymore, but afterlife belief, it is very reassuring for those that are sitting on the fence and don't really know, is there something out there or is there nothing at all?
And maybe also beyond belief, because these are actually experiences, like you were saying with past life regression or with near-death experiences. I mean, you experienced it as much as you would experience walking down the street and you know, buying apples. It's very real, and it's so profoundly real that people literally come back from these near-death experiences and they are profoundly changed. And the same thing happens with the past life regression. You know, the question for me with past life regression is, and then I would like to talk or ask you about your own past life regression, which you had that was very much linked to your throat chakra. But I remember when I was young and I was in an ashram in India, and at that time the whole rebirthing and past life regression is quite the fashion, actually. And I remember being incredibly curious, you know, and wanting to know, you know, was my partner my past, you know, whoever knows, were we in China, were we in Greece or whatever. And I remember a very wise man came to me and he said, do not play with fire, because when you're meant to see it, it will appear. And do you think it, I mean, and I never went searching for it, because I always remembered that when I meant to see it, it will appear. And maybe I'm not supposed to see that my child was the father or my, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
What are your thoughts on past life regression? When should one seek sessions, of course, with well-trained people, and when should one let it be and trust that life will, unfold and will show you what you need to see?
I'm a great believer, Kara, that when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. It's an old cliche. But I suppose for me, I've been very blessed in the sense that I've had, since I was very young, so many spiritual experiences that cannot be explained by just everyday facts and figures and calculations. I'm very blessed in that sense. But it was something also, Kara, that I kept hidden for many years. I never discussed my near-death experience that happened in 1992 until I started the journey with this book in 2018. It was something that very, very few people knew about. It's like you had said in a word earlier, I had hidden the fact. I was, I suppose, afraid of being perceived as a bit weird or away with the fairies, as I've been told a lot of the time. But for me, when I was going through all this in extensive research as well, but then again, I was running classes on spiritual awakening. I was running classes on the journey of the soul. I was doing workshops with how to connect with your loved ones that have made their transition to the other side. They were all very much part of the healing journey for people who had lost loved ones. And for myself, I was eager, I was anxious, I would do anything, just for proof for myself, not just for anybody, but just for myself. So I had a lot of past life regression with somebody credible, somebody registered, somebody that I knew. So it was so important. And you mentioned earlier, one of them involved, which was hugely significant in this lifetime for me, Kara, when I was 24 years of age, all of a sudden I started I'd wake up at night with my mouth full of blood, and I would be gasping because the blood would be choking me. And then I would go to maybe the doctor, which I wasn't very fond of at the time, going to doctors. And the doctor would say, oh, it's a streptococcal throat. It's kind of strange that you're getting at this age, blah, blah, blah. So it started to get so bad that the tonsils just swelled so much that I was hardly able to breathe or swallow. So then at 24, I had a tonsillectomy, some nodes removed. So fast forward many years later when I'm having this past life regression, and I was in some part of, I'm not sure, was it France or was it Egypt, because I had many of them done. But it transpired that at the age of 24, I had, my tongue had been cut out. And it was a drowning in France. I'm just being reminded here, but my God, it was a drowning in France, because that time I had spiritual gifts and kind of psychic ability, and I was deemed as a witch. So I remember standing in this, at this kind of middle place in a place in France, and I was at a fountain, and I looked down and my feet are bound, my hands are behind my back, and I'm in this type of an unusual vintage type lace dress, and I hear drum rolls, and I'm just wondering what is going on here. And then all of a sudden I'm just pushed forward, and my head is pushed into the fountain to be drowned. And then the two hands come and catch me by the throat and squeeze the last bit of life force out of me. And then I remember floating above my body, and I saw my body being thrown onto a cart and being wheeled off through the town. And it was then that because in a French voice, I was able to say, when my regressor asked me, what age are you? I was 24. What did I see? What did I witness? What did I experience? And my throat at that time, I was 24 when I died that time, and I was 24 when my throat started to bother me again. So the imprint of that past life, I had carried it in my body until I had my regression therapy, and all of the symptoms, sore throat, everything that I was still having, all disappeared at that
Do you think they disappear when we are simply conscious? Because you could also re-trigger things through this. So is there a magic that happens that when we can consciously experience and consciously see what happened to us, that is what makes it magically disappear? Because it could also be that you walk home and need a bottle of whiskey and say, "Oh my God, I don't even know, I don't even, my goodness gracious,
No.
you know." I mean, it's a horrific death, whether it's in this life or a past life. It's horrific, right? You could also just paralyze you. I mean, I might be paralyzed myself. I mean, being a singer, it just would be. It's horrific. So what is your experience from people that have gone through past life regressions? Is it often that the disease that the imprint from a past life can be re-triggered
or reactivated?
Yeah, reactivated, or that this can be the healing journey that we're asked to feel or to be in, whether it was whether it was a drowning or whether it was a stabbing. I know myself, I had a very strong back pain in my for many years, and I went to a healer, and of course you can't prove it, but you can feel it. And he told me about a situation where I had a shipyard, and I had two very dear friends, and I basically had drawn up my will and said, these we had been together for, I don't know, best friends for 20, 30 years. I obviously didn't have a family. I had this big shipyard, and somehow wrote this will that when I die, when I go, they will both get everything I have, right, out of friendship. And the next day, somebody stabbed me so that he could get it quickly, right? And as soon as I also experienced this, also the back pain went away. I mean, as soon as I became conscious that it was that point of where the knife came in, and it's fascinating. It is really fascinating that. But would you advise past life regressions to get glimpses of maybe where, or do we have to really be quite aware, or do we just sense if somebody's credible, or we only work with people? I mean, what is your experience?
Kara, it's very, first of all, Dr. Brian Wells, who is just amazing, but not just for Dr. Brian Wells, there are many others who do past life regression, who actually firmly believe, and Dr. Michael Newton is another, because he works a lot with the soul as well, and he, on all of them that I have studied and that I have studied under as well, they have always said that past life phobias are our present day phobias. If we might have a fear of spiders, a fear of going near water, a fear of going under a tunnel, that it's something that happened to us in a previous lifetime. And when we have sometimes our soul will decide, Kara. I always believe the soul will provide the vehicle, the teacher at the right time. And
Beautiful.
It's so important. And it is so important, Kara, that we don't force anything. The body has to be ready, and the soul then will accommodate it. And our soul is a super intelligence. And past life regression, Kara, is not for everyone. Like soul retrieval that I do as well. It's not for everybody. But the soul will always choose the right medium at the time for the individual person.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to take another very, very short break. I could talk to you for hours. So now we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll be back with Mariel Forde Clarke and her new book, Whereafter.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site. but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. There is this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to Black and brown people. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. There's something better waiting for us, something that feels more like freedom. Truth can inspire change. Please learn more at eji.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I'm your host, Kara Johnstad. With me in studio today is Mariel Forde Clarke, and we're talking all about our soul's journey. Mariel, the more we live in love, the closer we come to God, or we could say source. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the language of love and how the vibration of love holds this immense mystery together.
I mentioned Einstein earlier, Kara, and I was fascinated when I came across that Einstein, even in his latter years, he wrote a beautiful love letter to his daughter, Lestrelle, so that the letter would be given to her when she was older by the nanny that looked after her. But Einstein said, instead of E equals mc squared, and we use the power of love multiplied by the speed of light squared, we arrive at the conclusion that love is the most powerful force that there is on the planet, because it is limitless. And love is, and I know it sounds very kind of corny, love is, it's a language, it's a gift. Nothing exists without love, and nothing is healed without forgiveness. And those two are very much featured in Whereafter, because these are two miracle changes, love and forgiveness. And love is complicated, and love is a gift, and love is, it takes time for us to fall in love, but it takes so little time for us to fall out of love, and with true love, there is no judgment, there is no expectations, just an acceptance. But love is what I found when I was doing the research. I came across, a wonderful thing about Piaget. He was the French psychologist, and he had been called into an orphanage run by nuns. And, he walked into this very, very clinical, sterile environment. But the mortality rate was huge. The children were dying for no apparent reason. But he discovered on, an analysis, and he was surveying what the nuns were doing. Even though everything was spick and span and so clean, the children were never touched. They were never hugged. They were never cuddled. Even their feeding was done through an apparatus that was attached to their cots. So they had no human handling whatsoever. So what he advised was that you bring in some of the local school children and get the school children to hug them and play with them and hold them. And what happened? When they were loved, the mortality rate dropped. It totally dropped. The children, because they responded to love. Love is an energy. It's a life force. Love is a positive chi, and that's the same love that courses through our veins and through our cells. When we are all loved up, we're so happy, Kara. We feel invincible, and we fall in love, and it's wonderful and magical. But the secret is, how do we stay in love and keep the magic? It doesn't happen for all of us. And I'm very much one of those witness to that it didn't happen for me as much as I loved the magic in the beginning. you know. But as human beings, you know, we have, I suppose, too much expectation for ourselves and for those around us. So without love, nothing is healed. We need love and we need forgiveness. And, you know, there was Dr. Matthew Emoto. He wrote an incredible book. You may have heard of it, Kara. What was the name of it now? The Healing Power of Water.
Of water.
Yes, and his experiment was with his students. He got them to put drops of water on a slide and put them under a microscope. You see, because of my science background, I love to base. That's why I remember it. And one of the microscopes with the drop of water, he got the students to come in every day and curse it and get angry with it and condemn it, and you're ugly and you're horrible, you're not nice, you're disgusting. And the other microscope, he got the other students to come in and say, I love you, water, I bless you, water, I honor you, you are beautiful, you have sustained me, you give me life. And they experiment in after so many weeks to put the slides, each of the slides under the microscope. And the microscope where the water had been cursed and condemned was just a big, black, dirty blob under the microscope.
Yeah.
When they put the other microscope, the one that was loved and blessed, who said, I love you and I nourish you and you honor you, when that was put under the microscope, oh my God, the kaleidoscope of beautiful color and beautiful images, nearly like the DNA of a cell. It's absolutely captivating, and is to be worth anyone's while to look up Dr. Matthew Emoto, because his experiments were huge. And I suppose, you see, like you would know, Kara, words carry sound and vibration. So our words will hurt or they can heal. So it's so important when we open our mouth that we try with all our hearts and souls to try and bring a loving dimension to it. Even if we're angry, let us bite our tongue and just hold on for a second and see how can we say this better. You know, it's so important. Love is the key.
Yeah, love is the key. I mean, Emoto did so many amazing experiments. He did them also with rice and everything that had water. I think that is also key, the power of word. And what fascinates me, there's a lot of research that you did in your book also with after-death communication or during near-death experiences, literally the soul, leaving the body and literally being told, I say, because I love the power of the word, it's not your time yet. And I'm like, for me, this is fascinating because I really think that voice, see, I'm this crazy one who thinks that voice is a vibrational thread that is going through the past lives and the future lives. We're creating our future with voice. And it's also going between our ancestors and our beloveds. And what is your thought on that? What is your thought on your experience on when you work with people, the importance of writing, the importance of speaking, the importance of listening to or also as a channel and as a guide, listening to what your guides are saying, the importance of word and the vibrational force of voice.
It's so important, Kara, and it's funny. It's not funny, but it's amazing the amount of people. When it comes, I'm always invited. It seems to be a bizarre word for them, but I'm called in by the relatives of the family of the person that's about to transition, and those are the hours and the days that are so precious and so sacred, especially for the person that's about to transition, because I see the difference in them. I have seen them sit up in bed and they fight. I don't want to die, and they're angry. I'm not ready to die yet. I'm too young. And then I see as they're becoming closer to the other side, they're becoming more silent. They're becoming more peaceful. And that's because their loved one's past has already entered the room. They have already seen their loved ones. And they had sat up in bed and they had said, one of the instances, actually, it was one of my friends and her 12-year-old daughter was, she had a very rare form of leukemia at the age of 9, and she had a very successful bone marrow transplant at that time. And when she was 12, it just came on again that she was very poorly, and at that stage she was given 6 weeks to live. So I was with my friends. We were in vigil, as I say, and I'm always guided what to do with the transitioning soul. But with this little girl, it was very, very different. And she was in and out of a coma for about 3 days. But and her mom, of course, was distraught. And at one stage, she just grabbed her mother's hand and she says, "Oh, mommy, I have been in the most beautiful place," she said. And she said, "And mommy, Peter was with me. And Peter said that you are not to be sad anymore, that he's going to come for me soon. He's going to take care of me." And she says, "Oh, I'm so happy." And she lay back down in bed and went into a full coma, which she didn't come out of. But the irony of the story, Kara, is that Lucy never knew she had a brother called Peter, because he had died 3 years before she was born. So this gave her mom huge kind of belief in the afterlife and belief that Peter was on another plane of spiritual existence, and that he still existed, and that he was there to bring his little sister home, when her time came. So there is many different things that I would have witnessed. And also, I suppose, when somebody is about to transition, Kara, as well, that's the time for a lot of healing that happens with family. I have seen families come together that some members of the family may not have spoken, especially in Ireland. We have a lot of problems with land. So, the land, the field, if you remember John Huston's The Field. Yeah. And, a lot goes on over land. And it was very prevalent years and years ago. And the fights and the rows among families with the division of land still exist. It hasn't gone away, but it's not as cruel. But I've seen where brothers have made up 40 years later, just at the bedside of the dying. And I have seen forgiveness shared. I have seen songs sang. But I've also seen where, I would always encourage, if it's a grandparent or maybe a mom or a dad, I'll always, if it's at all possible, I'll always encourage the children to sit on the bed, to stroke their mom or their dad, to hold their hand and interlink, to, tell them what happened at school today, to say, to explain to them that mommy can still hear them, and, they will draw pictures for their mommy, so mommy can take them with them to heaven. So it's there is lots of tools as well and techniques in Whereafter for those that are trying to help children to process the fact that somebody that close to them has died. So, and it's also important to prepare the children to say goodbye as well when the time is right. It's all about timing, so many beautiful things happen in that silence and in those hours leading up to when the person finally takes their last breath. But love is so palpable, and love, as I said earlier, love is the key to our existence, and it's so important, and it's love that doesn't die. We bring that love with us.
Very, very well said. That is true, Mariel. You have a lot of tools in the book Whereafter. You talk about the children often being the forgotten mourners, that we don't realize how hard it is for them. They might not be able to express it in or we might just think they're just playing, but they need sacred spaces. They need to be able to draw pictures. They need to be able to talk about it. You also have a chapter, we are coming to the close of the hour, but you also have an incredible chapter on suicide and how we have to let go of this idea of, shame and blame and I think you said it so well also in the beginning that often these are contracts that the people already have when they come in. And although it breaks our heart wide open, anybody who's had a dear friend or family member commit suicide, that we can only, as we say, love them back home, right? We can only, we're all walking ourselves back home, as Ramdas said, and we're all journeying home. So,
and
where can people...
Kara,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. No. It's so important, Kara, for anybody who has lost a loved one, and it's very important to get this said tonight. So important for anyone who has lost a loved one to suicide. It is never, ever the fault of another person, nor is it the fault of the victim either. See it as a range of other factors like mental illness, society, bullying, conditioning, sexual orientation, depression, financial losses, just to name a few. And to let anybody know that anybody who's lost a loved one to suicide, that they are equally welcomed home, and they cross over to the other side as well.
Exactly. Thank you, Mariel Forde Clarke, for being with me today at Voice Rising. You are a blessing for the world. We thank you for all your work you're doing for our community, our collective, and I hope you come back again soon.
Bless you, and thank you so very much. Bless you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
God bless you.